there. Welcome to this episode of Kennedy Saves the World. It's Hump Day in terms of the month of January. In the UK, January 12th is considered Quitter's Day because that mathematically is the day that most people abandon their resolutions, which isn't sad at all or surprising if you're like me and you don't make resolutions because historically resolutions are made to be broken. People put so much pressure on themselves, and when they don't achieve these impossible goals, they get really depressed and they go completely in the other direction, which means whatever unhealthy habit they were trying to undo, they double down on that and make it even less healthy, if that is possible. So if your goal was to lose weight by eating better and you didn't quite get there because you were hungry for 2 weeks straight, then what do? You binge, you eat more, you eat horrible things. You eat horrible things at the worst time of day, which is usually like 11 at night. And then you have a brick in your gut. You wake up with a food hangover. And if you were doing dry January and you abandon that as well, you have an alcohol hangover too, and you feel more miserable than you did going into January because probably now because of the holidays, you are also in debt. So if you actually, and there was some good advice in one article I read about Quitter's Day, and instead of thinking of it in negative terms, maybe think of it as a reset. And this is something that I always agree with because you have to constantly check in with yourself if you want to be successful in changing a habit or a pattern in your life. And it takes a lot of time and a lot of patience, and you have to extend a lot of grace and forgiveness to yourself, which is impossible to do if you put this massive amount of pressure on yourself. And if you look back at every other January you've ever had and the failed resolutions you've ever had, if you're resolving things in the same way, in the same manner, expecting the same results, but there's no different input at all, then you're going to have the same outcome again, and it's going to make you feel like garbage. That's why the treadmills are once again open in February, because people abandon, their high aspirations, which are too high. It's too much. So if you think of it as a reset, and I always tell people this in terms of a race, whether it's a triathlon or a half marathon, if you're running something and you feel like garbage in the middle and you want to quit, you want to give up. But as bad as you feel in that moment, you'll feel so much worse for a much longer time if you just give up when you could have had a little bit more gas left in the tank. And that's when I tell people to do a reset. And that's where you kind of step back from the race, step back from the moment. You examine exactly what all the circumstances are. Are you just tired? Are you dehydrated? Are you overwhelmed? And you have a reset there. So maybe instead of having these sky-high expectations, you go at it with a little bit more moderation. Like in a race, what I would say, a reset, and I have done this, I give myself a mile to run a little bit slower and check in with my body. That way, I'm not accelerating. I'm not just, jamming on the gas the whole time, because you will run out of gas if you do that. So if you give yourself a little bit of a window where you can ease up and, maybe not try cutting out all carbohydrates, maybe just try cutting out some carbohydrates at night. And then the rest of the day, maybe the carbs you eat are like sweet potatoes and oatmeal, which are still delicious and satisfying. It's not a Snickers bar, which tastes really good in the moment, but there are the things that you can do to kind of reset. And instead of going full bore on something that is much more extreme than what you've experienced in the past, then take a window for a period of moderation, and you might find that moderation is really what you needed in the first place, and that might be more sustainable, and that can take you a week further and maybe another week after that. And then when you start establishing some better patterns because you're being nicer to yourself, that may help you change a habit long term. And it's a very, very difficult bell to unring when you have been used to, when you were having cravings or when you were upset, reaching for something sweet and creamy and delicious. It's human nature. Like, we are programmed to crave things like sugar and fat because they weren't in abundance when we were evolving. And our brains needed them in order to be alert and continue functioning. So we weren't eaten by predators. And, the predators now, other than creeps online, it's really ourselves and giving into that need for a sugar rush or dopamine. So instead of trying to stop that completely, because trying to quit anything cold turkey, it really is a fruitless pursuit. It is so impossible to maintain over the long haul. So instead of thinking that you are magically going to change your life in a month, just, dial it back a little bit and see if that works. And if you're able to successfully navigate without cravings and the feeling of deprivation, which leads to depression, then maybe you can make some further alterations. It's just like when you're training for a race. You don't go from not working out at all to running 6 miles a day. Maybe you run 2 or 3 miles. Maybe you walk 2 or 3 miles a couple days a week. And then slowly you go up to 3.2 miles. And then after a month, you can add another day of the week. And that is a successful map for becoming a runner. The same is true if you're trying to change your eating or drinking habits. And that's, and we can talk about this more later in the week, but that's one of the issues that I have with Dry January. If you are trying to cut down your drinking, then why don't you start by cutting alcohol out 2 or 3 days a week and see how that works? And then maybe add another day of sobriety in your week, and you might feel better. You might be treating your body better. And again, you will have a much higher likelihood of success if you do something like that. Moderation is not sexy. It's not something that is advertisable. You don't make TikTok videos about it. You're not going to go viral. You're not going to create a trend by just cutting something back a little bit, but it is much kinder to do to yourself and for yourself. So don't worry if on Quitter's Day or on January Hump Day, you gave up on something. It doesn't mean you have to give up on everything. Maybe all you need is a momentary pause, a reset, so you can take stock in what you're doing and what you like, and do more of what you like and what makes you feel better, and stop doing the thing that makes you feel like garbage. If you don't like running, I tell people this all the time, don't run. That may not be something that your body is designed to do. So don't do it. Don't put yourself through an excruciating process that is going to make you feel worse on the other end. Whenever you work out, it doesn't matter how good a shape you're in. It doesn't matter how long you've been involved in a fitness program. The first 5 minutes of anything completely suck. That's why instead of, when you get to the track and when you get on a treadmill, don't start sprinting. Warm up with a walk and just focus on that and slowly add speed, but not methamphetamine. There are ways to change habits and to be successful. I don't think New Year's resolutions are the way. But I do believe that if you want something badly enough, take incremental, realistic steps to get there. And then it's only January. By spring break, you're going to be sexy as hell from the inside out. This has been Kennedy Saves the World. I'm Kennedy.
Listen ad-free with a Fox News Podcast Plus subscription on Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Prime members can listen to this show ad-free on the Amazon Music app.
Oh, go ahead and leave me a review while you're there. I'd love to hear what you have to say. You've been listening to Kennedy Saves the World on the Fox News Podcast Network.